Hello and welcome to the 2020 Global Fleet Conference. Car makers are definitely among the worst hit by the events this year in our industry. And today we are going to look at what they are doing to serve global fleet managers in the new normal. I would like to welcome the three car manufacturers in this session. And so, ladies and gentlemen, it is my real pleasure to welcome Yuri Tello, Manager Global Fleet and Government Sales Support at General Motors, Simon Dransfield, Director Fleet and Business, Jaguar Land Rover Europe, and finally Jean-Christophe PSA, Head of International B2V Development at Group PSA. Gentlemen, welcome. It's great that you are joining our conference. Also because we of course understand that your business has been heavily impacted by the pandemic and that probably your energy will be needed to lead your company to a smooth recovery. So I would like to discuss with you a few topics, and let's start with getting back to the new normal. Gentlemen, the pandemic has seriously disrupted the automotive and fleet marketplace, you know it. Production and sales of both new and used cars was brought to a halt, and this raises questions about how fast you will be able to reactivate your business and serve global fleet customers in the best circumstances. My first question is for Jean-Christophe of Group PSA. Jean-Christophe, what are the main consequences of COVID-19, not only for PSA but for OEMs in general and their organization? Can you a little bit explain?
Well, this pandemic is clearly a cash problem for OEMs because we are in an industry which is really needing a lot of facilities, stock rotations, and so on. And as long as you have no customers to take the cars at the dealership, you need to handle all these stocks and also all the factories. So it has really heated strongly the car industry in a way that all our industrial tool has to be stopped very quickly, and it's kind of unprecedented. And also we have had to deal with car stockage on compounds and so on. So also immobilization. So for us OEMs as well as for dealers, it has clearly been a tough issue on cash.
Okay. Yuri, you are representing General Motors. You are based in North America. Are there any other consequences that you can perhaps describe in North America, or are they similar to what Jean-Christophe has just mentioned?
I would say that it's similar to what he had just mentioned. We had to close all the plants in North America, including Canada and Mexico as well. But we started bringing our plants back online on the week of May 18th, and we've been ramping up production there, and it's going well. No infections have happened inside the plants that have been reported, and we've implemented very strict protocols to prevent that from happening. Obviously, that shutdowns have brought a lot of budget cuts, not only for our industry, but in general for a lot of industries, especially the travel and entertainment industries have been, highly affected. And in the fleet business, the rental companies have had a very hard time going through this as their business basically stopped. A side effect of the pandemic, however, is that companies may have realized that there are ways that they have become more efficient by being forced to work from home, close plants, look at all kinds of savings that they can achieve, and also the increased level of expertise in the use of these virtual tools that we have all been forced to achieve to work and meet remotely will probably have an impact also in the way that fleet vehicles are used. perhaps there will be a higher utilization of pool vehicles by companies, etc. Our dealers also definitely were impacted, but they are up to speed now in processes to do deep cleaning to ensure vehicles' interiors are clean at delivery time as well as after service.
Okay. Simon, would like to see with you a little bit what the consequences are for fleet sales, because you are all three, let's say, experts in vehicle fleet sales. So can you elaborate a little bit on how does the COVID-19 pandemic impact global fleet sales?
Yeah. So if we look at the different segments that we all operate in terms of our fleet businesses, if you take the rental, I think that probably the short-term rental market, that has been probably the most dramatically impacted. And I think, the time ahead for them still will continue to be tough until, the tourism and the business travel market returns. In terms of the larger finance businesses, the leasing operations, they reacted relatively quickly in cooperation with ourselves. And, they tended to extend their contracts to allow the flexibility with the customer to retain the vehicle and not have that challenge of trying to replace the vehicle. Now, clearly, in many cases, it's 6 or 12 months extension. They may not fulfill those full extension requirements, and that will help us stimulate the market, I think, as we come out of the pandemic challenge. And then if you look at the SME, I think for them, clearly they've got specific challenges around, their sustainability and are they going to survive as a business. So clearly we're having to put together, finance packages from our captive business to try and support them to re-engage back with us. But I think the other clear element for fleets is probably that uncertainty ahead. And clearly mobility will have a role to play, and we're accelerating programs there to support maybe a shorter term commitment and greater flexibility in their car policies.
Okay, thank you. Would like to continue a little bit with the car manufacturers and the production of cars. Jean-Christophe, is COVID-19, you think, the end of global sourcing and manufacturing? And are we going back, let's say, to a sort of delocalization of production?
Personally, I would like so, and that would mean a lower CO2 footprint. And but in a global economy like the one we are living in, there will still be global sourcing for very simple reasons. It remains less expensive to produce in some areas in the globe than others. So. Yes, I'm sure there will be a part of relocalization and local production to some extent, but overall, it will not be the end of global sourcing, I'm afraid.
Okay. Yuri, do you agree with your colleague? Is it the same for General Motors?
I agree that this will continue. However, in the last few years, I would say maybe the last decade, the single sourcing that was the mantra for the industry, I think has become a little bit under attack, because there is a high risk when you only have one supplier, especially for some critical parts that you need, right? And if they are far away in a different continent, that increases the risk for your plants significantly. So I think from that perspective, probably even before the pandemic, there has started to be a move towards diversifying a little bit more and not relying on just one particular supplier for certain type of parts that are very critical and hard to store.
Okay. Simon, can you say that Jaguar Land Rover, the brands that you are representing, that you are already now back on track with the production and the delivery of all models and all vehicles like before?
I would say straightforward answer would be no. And I don't think any manufacturers are at that point. And I think the way that we are bringing our manufacturing back online is respectful of the requirements that we have to fulfill around the health and safety of our employees in the business. So there are specific limitations which will restrict the full production capacity of all the plants. So we are producing vehicles, but also the fact is, as I think was Jean-Christophe was saying earlier, there are cars out there in the market in stock with our markets and retailers. So, clearly what we don't want to do is try and produce over and above the demand in the market. So, it's a balancing act as we open up the new productions facilities to ensure that we're not pushing more cars into the market than is demand from our fleet customers.
Okay, it's also because I would like to know what your recommendations are regarding car policy strategy going into the new normal, if perhaps, probably today, not all car manufacturers or no car manufacturer is able to deliver all the models, all the powertrains to the customers.
Yeah, so I think, it's about having a flexible policy. And clearly, sometimes the most flexible policies where you allow a TCO to drive the whole principle with maybe an open brand choice. Clearly, some of the larger key accounts leverage their size to negotiate single deals with single brands. Yes, that can look very good in a financial perspective, but in terms of the deliverables on that, whether that be from customer satisfaction or whether it be from that continuity of supply, I think the primary driver should be the cost of ownership for our fleet customers rather than purely just the brand.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, for several years now, car manufacturers, also other suppliers and global fleet managers like yourself have been undertaking efforts to make their vehicle fleet green and to take on challenges related to air pollution and emissions. The question is, will OEMs be able to keep up the investments to develop new and electric powertrains? And once again, Simon, going into the new normal, do you expect an exponential growth in fleet electrification and EV adoption?
Well, we've as a business have taken a significant investment into the EV and PF market, and clearly we're expecting that growth to be there in the market, and maybe there is going to be some acceleration coming out of this pandemic. That we have a new opportunity to position from a not just from a cost effectiveness, but from a sustainability perspective, the EV proposition. So clearly we were the first in the market with a premium EV with the I-Pace, and there is a number of new products coming over the next sort of 12, 18 months, which are hopefully going to address the demand in the market.
Okay. Jean-Christophe, can you elaborate, because you represent a global car group PSA, can you elaborate a little bit about the global outlook of the powertrain and model mix within fleets in the new normal?
Yes, sure. I think electrification is on the way and will remain on the way. I mean, a lot of investments have been made already, as Simon mentioned earlier, and we are on a long-term development phase, in the car industry. So this push toward electrification will keep on, and I personally think it will even accelerate because of the current regulation, which is getting stricter in more and more regions in the world, but also because of the fact that end drivers are taking into account that more and more, and I mean this crisis has even accelerate this trend that there is a need to be more respectful towards the environment, and also big more conscious about all those issues. This was a theme which was already in the area, flying in the air, but now when you speak to people, even some of them are thinking to relocate and go and live outside big cities, So you know, mindset is changing, and I'm sure this will promote the switch to more electrified cars on the roads.
Okay, Yuri, with the move to zero-emission friendly cars and also the situation that we are in today, will OEMs perhaps trim their offer to focus on margins on the one side and CAFE compliance on the other?
I think yes. In GM's case, even before the pandemic, our CEO Mary Barra and other members of our leadership team have made the tough decisions to, leave some markets, some products that were not as profitable as we require, in order to allocate money or those funds to the development of more electric vehicles in a faster way, battery cells, even autonomous vehicles. In some cases, the actions we had to take were very painful, but they were taken because that's where we think the future of the company is, in electric vehicles, and that's where we're going. We have also investing also in increasing or improving our ICE powertrains for the time being, including mass reductions. But that will also, in combination with the paring down of some options in current models, will allow us to better meet CAFE requirements. During the pandemic, despite the budget cuts that we went through, we were able to protect those investments in order to not alter the time frame for the release of these new models that we hope will start getting out like in the next couple of years.
Okay. We of course know that in Europe electrification is quite high on the agenda. We also know that in countries like China it has been pushed now since several years. GM is also a player in Latin America and North America. Do you expect there an exponential growth of electrification?
I think so as well. We're developing the products now that we will be able to produce in other areas of the world as well. As Simon was saying, there is some mandates from governments to increase the availability of these products. So we will definitely be having vehicles available in the rest of the world at some point in the future.
Mm-hmm. Okay. A big question also for global fleet managers is, of course, electric vehicles is nice, but you should be able to deliver them. So what about the delivery times? Simon, can you explain a little bit if you are going to be able to deliver the electric vehicles your customers are ordering, to deliver them in time?
Well, our factory in Graz building the I-Pace is up and running, and we have sufficient stocks to meet the demand in the market. So there is no lead time issues with around the I-Pace. I think in all future products, I think every manufacturer is reviewing their schedule and as Yuri said, the investment required to deliver those products. But as we stand at the moment, we have sufficient batteries, which is the key component of an EV. We have sufficient batteries to support the production of the I-Pace and the demand in the market.
Jean-Christophe, is this the same for Group PSA? Because you also have, of course, hybrid and electric vehicles in your offer. Can you let's say, hand them out and give them to the customers in short period of times?
Well, we have no specific worries with regards to this topic. And again, the strategy of PSA is to leave the choice to the end driver on the engine type, whether it's diesel, petrol, a hybrid, plug-in hybrid, electric. So we have, and we will have more and more offers in each of those categories going forward. And we have no shortage so far with regards to battery supply or whatever. No, we're quite confident on this regard.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, global fleet managers want harmonization, not only in terms of vehicle choice, but also when it comes to service quality and after sales. But even before the pandemic, we saw differences in service quality across the regions. So we would like to know how OEMs are responding to the service level request of global fleet managers. And so the first reaction is for Yuri Tello of GM. Yuri, will it become a challenge to secure the stable delivery times and transparent pricing, knowing there may be a second wave later this year?
Definitely, there is a challenge in terms of the shutdowns that we have to do in order to accommodate the mandated closings in several parts of the world. We are coming back with reopening the plants in several places, and we implemented safety protocols at all of our facilities, based on the experience that we had gained previously in China as well as South Korea. Those procedures have proven to be very effective here in North America as well. So we hope that with that implementation, the need for full closures going forward should be minimized. But obviously, we are dependent on the intensity of that second wave if it materializes, and also whatever mandates governments will have for us. Obviously, we'll do the right thing. The safety of our employees is paramount for the company leadership as well. So that we're going to be very dependent on that. There will be some impact to deliveries of even before the pandemic. So there are some areas where we've also had challenges, especially in North America. We've had issues with transportation, rail tracks, at some points, and it's been an issue. But we do our best to maintain our deliveries as reliable as possible. I think we have a very good OTD that is comparable to anybody in the industry, even better in many cases. And in terms of pricing, we try to be competitive. Obviously, right now there is a lot of pressure on making some money to recover from the losses that we've had by shutting the plants, and also the reduced demand from customers such as rental companies, etc.
Okay. Simon, do you think that when we will have a second wave, that perhaps it will not be so devastating for the OEMs and the fleet industry, because we perhaps have learned something already from this first wave?
Yeah, I think the impact, if and when there is a second wave in several markets, it will probably happen. I think if you look back to where we were in January, February, and how we reacted as governments or as communities, clearly there was a lot of unknown that we were dealing with, and things were taken to dramatic extent in terms of closing whole economies down, in effect. I think on the second wave, we've all got protocols in place, both in our own personal lives and our business lives, and the unknown is not quite as unknown going into phase 2 of the pandemic. So I think there'll be concern, but there won't be maybe the panic that ensued, and maybe some of the strong decisions that really did some desperate damages to our businesses and many of our customers' businesses. I don't see the same level of reaction. I think also some of the things that maybe all of us have invested in accelerated, such as the digitalization, the customer engagement more in the digital environment, has now come to the forefront. And there's probably a greater comfort engaging in that manner than previously was the case. So there'll be new ways of working and behaving, as well as in terms of managing the situation should there be a second wave.
Okay, thank you. Jean-Christophe, can we expect a price increase for vehicles by the end of the year?
It's a very good question. I must say that this is not something we are investigating so far at PSA. We are really working together with governments who are facilitating some incentives, in order to restart the activity full speed. And some of those incentives are mostly dedicated to BEVs or PHEVs. So we really surfing on this in order to accelerate the energy transition. And also that's an opportunity for us for the CAFE target as well.
Okay. Another topic, also for you, Jean-Christophe, is how could you develop and guarantee an up-to-date global product offering, knowing that there are so many market differences, that there are perhaps challenges in terms of import and export of vehicles within countries, and global fleet customers, of course, they would like to have a harmonized product offering that is up to date. So what is your strategy and recommendation there?
Well, as I was saying before, we are working on long plan strategy and product renewal and so on. So we did not take any decision with regard to this product strategy so far. It's not on the agenda. We are rather expecting to move and push ourselves outside Europe. We will introduce lately, by the end of the year, the first pickup vehicles within PSA organization. It's going to be the Peugeot Landtrek, with coverage in Middle East and Africa, Latin America, to start with. We're confident we will keep on with a global product offering with, of course, market specifics, and with, of course, some let's say rationalization in the range, in the entire range. We maybe product lineup which are not really achieving a certain volume thresholds, then we can step back from those segments. But apart from that, we still pushing and moving ahead with a global strategy.
Okay. Continuing with Yuri Tello of GM, and continuing also on what Jean-Christophe has said, Yuri, as multinational companies are looking to align car brand choices across regions, how do you serve global fleet customers in countries where you don't have a direct presence or where your organization is less mature?
Well, yeah, that question is, hits my heart here, because as you probably know, GM has discontinued operations in various international markets in recent years, such as Australia, Thailand. Obviously, we left Europe earlier than that, and others. This has definitely created challenges for our customers with large operations in those areas. And unfortunately, we cannot help significantly in those areas that we have left. But we continue supporting the global operations from our customers by providing a central point of contact based in Detroit, whereby we can help customers, instead of dealing with 15 different representatives from GM from different countries or regions. They can just have one place that they can talk, and then we'll do the work of contacting our different regions and getting the information that is required. Also, in the countries where we have stayed, we're trying to be very competitive in our bidding in order to kind of compensate, the areas that we left and that we cannot serve anymore. In addition to that, we have developed a niche process for a very small type of volume requirement that somebody may have in one country or another where we are not there anymore. This is through the export of North American vehicles built in the U.S. That we can ship or export to those areas under certain circumstances by using a third party.
Okay.
So that's how we're trying to address that need.
Good. Simon, we need to talk about your network, your dealers. Many dealers have been hit hard, and customers are also getting used to the digital workplace. Is the dealer, the car dealer as we know it, on his way out?
Well, I've been in the business now sort of 35 years or something, and this commentary was still taking place 35 years ago. So I think maybe it's a time where a lot of reflection is taking place in terms of how we operate as businesses going forward. What that doesn't mean, though, is that it's a sideways step. It's actually going in the same direction, but in maybe a new way. So, the retail market absolutely is the contact with the customer. They deliver the service, they deliver the brand experience for sure. But as I said earlier, I think maybe the digital engagement is got higher levels of investment and focus by them, and not just by the manufacturer at head office level. I think also sort of the opportunity with mobility and the role of the retailer in the mobility environment becomes really interesting, and it's something that we've got quite a lot of investment taking place at the moment with the launch of JLR Rent within Germany that's rolling out a share proposition based at retailer level. So maybe the revenue revenue streams are adjusted. Electric vehicles don't require the same level of maintenance that the ICE products do. So the retailers still very much are a local customer experience, but maybe then there's a wider opportunity for them going forward to have different investments and different opportunities to make their business viable going forward. But clearly, this current environment has hit not just the OEMs, it's hit the retailer networks, and many of them are entrepreneurial businesses, not part of large groups. That's the Jaguar Land Rover way is more of a family-orientated businesses rather than the big groups. So, we work very closely with them on a long-term relationship, and the pandemic will be here, and hopefully we'll have some form of treating it in the future going forwards, and business will return, but in maybe a new way.
Okay. Jean-Christophe, according to you, which dealers will emerge as the winners?
Well, definitely those who are having a multi-channel strategy, meaning being strictly on a physical, traditional way of selling cars, will not be the right option. The dealers who will go ahead are those having offline and online strategy with digital booking, selling online, all these facilities, because we see that more and more customers, not only B2B but also retail customers, they are buying their cars online first, and then they go to the dealership to test the cars, to ask questions, and so on. So we really have to go with this multi-channel strategy going forward.
Okay. Can we expect, Jean-Christophe, and after that I would like to have a reaction also of Yuri, that, for example, by the end of the year, knowing that there are perhaps thousands of vehicles staying in the parking lots that are not yet sold, that instead of, let's say, going via the dealer network, that you as a car manufacturer are going to sell yourself those cars to the end customer?
That's not what we are planning to do. Again, you have to know that within PSA we've been very proactive in shutting down factories, stopping production ahead of the crisis, being very agile in order to have to deal with as less stocks as possible. So we're not in a situation, maybe some other OEMs are, where you have to deal with thousands of cars in stocks that you have to get rid of. We're not in this situation, hopefully, which is good for our residual values and also good for our cash. We are really relying on tactical operations, government incentives in some countries, which are opportunities for us to promote those cars that we have to sell.
Okay. Yuri, any comment from you on the future of the dealer?
Yeah, so dealers are our partners in this business. We couldn't sell the volumes that we do if we didn't have them. So there is a big push from leadership to ensure that dealerships have a profitable model that would allow them to survive. We have no plans or trying to sell vehicles directly, especially with the level of investment that is required to be able to provide services, after sales, etc. So that right now we don't have any plans to do that. I think dealers can do that on their own. We work with them, establishing incentives and programs that will help them sell those vehicles. But on the other hand, also, we don't expect that, at least by the end of this year, we're going to have a lot of inventory left. We're actually short on inventory in certain lines, thanks to actually the good work that dealers did during the pandemic, where they continue to sell what they had in stock, and now the inventories are thin, especially in the lines that we sell the most of.
Okay. Simon, Yuri already mentioned it. After sales, my final question in this chapter goes about after sales. Hygiene and sanitation are, of course, major concerns. How can you guarantee as a car manufacturer a high-quality after-sales business in this pandemic and coming out into the new normal?
Yeah, well, I think both the employee and the customer are the primary requirement that we've got to fulfill in terms of their safety and health. And on that basis, no retailer opened up without the new sort of policies and procedures in place, relative for their market, because whilst there are standards, there's no one standard for Europe. So each market developed their own, but from a common platform. So all retailers are open, and most of them are open now. Service facilities probably were the first to be actually reopened even before sales. They all follow a very high level of procedures and policies to ensure that the customer is in the safest possible environment. There's never 100% guarantees, but we absolutely follow all the appropriate guidance and recommendations, and I'm pretty confident every single manufacturer and retailer would actually adhere to the same structure as well in terms of how they're responding.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our industry is evolving at fast pace thanks to new technology, connectivity, augmented reality, and of course, smart mobility. All ingredients for the new global fleet recipe. Jean-Christophe, how will new mobility affect your vehicle sales business strategy?
Well, we are clearly investing a lot on new formulas, new ways to sell cars. I will give you an example that we are testing in Europe. We've just launched a car before the COVID crisis. It's a city urban car from Citroën brand called Amy, which is a car going electric, pure electric, for which you don't need any driving license. It's really to commute from point A to point B. Very accessible car that can be either leased on a monthly basis or used on a per hour basis, to commute. So these are new areas where we are investigating a lot, which will probably end up being new ways of consuming car in the future.
Okay. Simon, we also seeing that even accelerated by the pandemic, on the one hand, leasing contracts were extended. On the other, it could also be that customers are looking for more flexible and on-demand leasing practices. How will that, if that happens, let's say, the more flexible attitude, how will that affect your fleet sales business?
Yeah, so I think, we have to look about not just performance in terms of numbers of cars sold, but in terms of customers engaged. And, clearly, we've all done the sums, and we've looked at, cars being utilised maybe 8-10% of their life. So clearly, from a budget perspective, it makes sense for a customer to have greater flexibility and choice as well in their cars and mode of transport that they use to work in both the business environment but also socially. So, from our perspective, it's ensuring that we have the appropriate propositions, and not necessarily developed by ourselves, but in some partnership propositions that we've presented, and ensuring that we're reaching a wider audience with our offers, which will then increase the sales as a result of that. So it's focusing on what the customer requires in the mobility environment, what data they require, what solutions they require. Jean-Christophe talking about the size of vehicles. So clearly, they've developed an alternative product, and with Project Vector, which we've communicated late last year, all manufacturers are looking at how do we have the right product for the right mobility solution to satisfy the consumer direction and demand for different services.
Okay. And finally, Yuri, what can you share regarding the evolution of safety tech and its impact on how attractive a car brand can be in the global fleet marketplace? Because we know, of course, that safety is one of the most important ingredients of a global fleet strategy.
That is true. More and more fleet customers are willing to provide, the safest vehicles to their employees, and they are taking advantage of the, latest safety features that OEMs have to offer. Features like automatic front and rear braking, lane departure warning, and others are not only good for your employees' safety, but also they add to your bottom line with higher residual values. So it's a good business proposition as well. GM has taken input from fleet customers and has been making those kind of features available on lower trim levels, where we had started, making those features available only on the LTZ premium type of trims. Now we're bringing them down based on fleet customer feedback that they need them without the need of, spending more on a higher trim level vehicle. So we have listened to that, and we're, for the last few years, we've been trying to make those options available on lower trim levels. And also, that convergence of these safety technologies together with the switch to electric propulsion is what is speeding up the development of autonomous vehicles, and it will help us achieve our vision of having zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion, hopefully in the not too far distant future.
Okay. Gentlemen, we have come to the end of this exciting panel discussion. It was a pleasure having you, and I'm sure also our audience now has a better understanding of what they can expect of you in the new normal. So thank you very much, Jean-Christophe Lucky of Group PSA, Simon Dransfield of Jaguar Land Rover, and Yuri Tello of General Motors. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to rate this session and give your feedback in our event app on Attendify, where you can also see what's on our agenda in the upcoming week. It was a pleasure being your moderator, and I wish you a safe and healthy global fleet journey. Bye-bye.